howdy, I'm Something Noticeable. Last time, I built my first ever custom mechanical keyboard. I became instantly addicted. I wanted to build another keyboard. However, this time, I wanted to solder. As I was looming over having no money and wanting to do another keyboard build, I found the MiniVan 40% keyboard. After a half-hour talk with my mother, she convinced me to buy the keyboard and help me pay for part of it. Like I said earlier, this keyboard is a 40% keyboard with a solder-only PCB. This means that if I want to attach or swap the switches, I can only do so with the use of a soldering iron. The building process for this keyboard was very different from last time. For starters, I already had all the necessary tools and lube purchased from my previous endeavor, along with some newfound knowledge on how to do this whole keyboard thing. Now let's get into this. What I needed to complete this build with was 105G0 and 205G0 lube, dielectric grease, switch separator, keycap holder, stem holder, and a brush. Other tools such as tweezers are welcome though not required. 60-40 solder along with a soldering iron. For those who don't know, 60-40 means the solder is 60% tin and 40% lead. Durock creamy green linear switches with 62 gram springs. I ordered 3 sets of the smoky casing from Amazon, and in true Amazon fashion, they sent me 2 sets of smoky and 1 set of clear. Thanks, Daddy Bezos. Some stabilizers. This item is weird. I only ended up buying a wire set instead of a whole stab set because I had an extra set of stab casings for my Portico keyboard build and wanted to save some money. So I ended up using that instead. The recommended keycaps to avoid the issue I had last time where I had my right shift key not be the correct size. But guess what? I bought the keycaps that were created for the board and it doesn't come with a full-size spacebar. So, have a spacebar. And the MiniVan keyboard. This is the JetVan version of the keyboard, meaning it is solder only. It has a nice smoke case. The switches are north facing, which can cause some issues with GMK keycaps when they bottom out. However, according to the key company, this should not be an issue. It comes with a nice feeling USB-C to USB-A cable along with an aluminum plate. This keyboard does not come with any form of dampening pad, so I'm curious what effect this will have on the sound and feel of it. The keyboard also has a bajillion different LED options. This build started much like my last build where I spent 3 hours lubing everything up, and just like last time, I started with the switches. The process to do this is quite simple, so let's quickly run through it. First I had to take the switches apart. I still don't have a switch lubing station, so lubing was done very jankily. I chose to use 14 clear switches and 29 smoky switches to create a sort of pattern on the PCB. When I went to record this, my camera turned off right before I was finished recording. Losing my recording. Yay! Gotta love it. Next I lubed the bottom housing right where the stem rubs against it. This time I also lubed the leaf, the little metal part. All of this was done using some 205G0 lube. This process was much quicker compared to last time because of there being fewer switches and also being more familiar with the inner workings of a switch. Then I bag lubed all the springs using some 105G0 lube. Bag lubing is the easier way to lube your springs in bulk. This process is quite simple. All I had to do was put all the springs in a bag, put a generous amount of 105G0 lube in, blow it up, and shake it vigorously for 2 minutes. This entire time my camera was low on storage, so I was constantly watching it to make sure that it didn't fail on me. Luckily, it didn't. This next step is the most awkward part of not having a switch lubing station, putting the springs in the bottom housings. There is an art to this process that I still have yet to master, though I should probably just cough up the $25 and buy a switch lubing station. Finally, I lubed the stems. Lubing the stem is fairly simple. I just had to lube each side, the bottom pole that goes in the spring, along with lubing the legs and the stem because there's no tactile bump I had to worry about lubing away this time. This was again lubed with a 205G0 lube from earlier. After I lubed each stem, I put the switch together entirely, making this take longer than it probably should have. Yet another reminder that I should get a switch lubing station. Then comes lubing the singular stabilizer for this keyboard. Again, I used the extra stab I had for my Portico build, hence the weird color. All I had to do was lube the casing of the stem itself, both done with 205G0 lube. Lube a wire using the dielectric grease. This is easily done just by sticking the wire into the nozzle. And insert all the parts together. Wanna know a crazy thing? I remember to clip in the fucking stabilizers. Click. no damn clue how good that sounded. The wire set came with instructions as to how to install and lube the stabilizers along with this nifty ruler to figure out your keycap size, and it specifically says to snap wire securely into place. I am a dumbass. Now, let's start the soldering process. Pop. Welcome to a different room. Mama Noticeable asked that I don't solder in my own room for safety reasons. I haven't done any serious soldering since I was in the 9th grade, so I need some practice. I spent quite a bit of time practicing soldering before going at it. This practice consisted of soldering resistors to a board for about an hour. I also decided to put on a mask and tie up my hair and grab a shorter chair to make this process easier and much more manageable. After I felt comfortable with the practice, it was time to solder the switches onto the board. I heated the soldering iron up to 370 degrees Celsius or 700 degrees Fahrenheit and got to work. Once I got going, the process was surprisingly simple and only took less than 30 minutes. However, it took me about an hour and a half to actually get started. I looked up how to solder a keyboard, I had to get the tools and parts about 6 times, I almost broke my stabilizer and lost a screw. It was going great. So how you solder a keyboard is, install the stabilizers, attach some of the keys to the plate, attach the plate key thing to the PCB, attach the rest of the keys to plate key PCB thing, otherwise known as the keyboard, then solder all the switches into place. Soldering this board was incredibly nerve-wracking. I was constantly afraid that I would melt through the board or break an LED or something. Luckily, none of that happened. I was also very surprised by the fact that all the switches worked. I was expecting that I would melt through a switch or something while doing this. Now that everything was soldered, it was time to finish the build. First I had to flash the keyboard. Effectively, this means putting the software that the keyboard needs to run on the keyboard. This process was pretty simple, taking about 5 minutes to do. It involved me plugging the keyboard into my computer, shorting a couple of pins, installing a sketchy looking software, but in the end it worked out. Then this final step went very quickly, saying I'm building a 40% keyboard. I had to put the case together, put on the keycaps, and I was all done. Now into the sound test. A link to the typing test is in the description below. And after all is said and done, I hate it. Let me explain. I'm very happy with how the keyboard turned out. I learned a lot about how to solder and how to more consistently lube. However, I hate linear switches. I never made a keyboard with them, nor have tried linear switches before, so I was really excited to try them out, though some more context is needed. Typing on them, I think, is not a good experience. It does not give me the feedback I'm looking for. However, gaming on them is absolutely amazing. I even wish I got some linear switches with some lighter springs in them, because the linear feel with the chunky bottom out is super satisfying while gaming. And that's the JetVan keyboard. I had an amazing time making the keyboard and had a lot of fun recording and editing it. I went into soldering very worried, but as it turns out, it's probably the easiest part of the build. If you have any advice as to how I can improve, please leave in the comments below. Though if you liked what you saw, consider liking and subscribing. Join this little corner of YouTube that I call home. Bombs away. Oh god. Come on. You can come off. Oh, fuck? That is impressive. Yeah, well that's an issue that I was not expecting to have.